Good morning. Good morning. My name is Drea Aguirre, and I am a regional digital coach. We're gonna give everybody like 2 more minutes to kind of trickle on in. I know we're waiting for a few more people. If you can, in the meantime, go ahead and use that tiny URL. It's going to send you to a Google Doc that has all of the links that you need for today, including this presentation. You are going to want this presentation. It's got tons of valuable information in it for you. You can keep it forever and ever. I promise I'm not going to like turn off all the links after the session is over. But if you could also go ahead and take the poll that is in the Meet chat. So if you look at your screen right now, there is a little button that has a triangle on top, a square, and a circle. Go ahead and click on that. Click on polls, and you're going to be able to see the poll that I have live right now. And it's going to ask you what you want to see demoed today. So that helps me know what to walk through. And we'll get started in about a minute.
Just in case anybody needs it, you will find the little triangle, the square, and the circle on the bottom right of your Meet bar.
All right, I'm gonna go ahead and start talking at you guys. So before we get started, I do want to let everybody know that this is being recorded, just so that people who weren't able to attend the session can watch it at a later date and time. But with that being said, if you don't want your face on recording, or if you seem to have a like laggy connection, I highly recommend that you turn off your camera. That tends to help things a little bit. And if we could all stay muted unless you are openly asking me a question, that would be awesome. Please take a second to get to know your Meet controls. If you have not used them in a hot minute over summer break, I hope you didn't. Hope you had a nice, relaxing break this summer. But also, if you could fill out that poll that is in the activity section. So it's going to be that triangle, square, and circle at the bottom right-hand side of your Meet screen. And I have a question from Sheila. I hope I said your name right. Go ahead and unmute and ask me.
Yes, I hate to ask stupid questions, but it's better than not knowing the answer. I put in the tiny URL, blah, 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 and I just have a Google page with some options. Can you put the link in the chat?
Yep.
And I don't see the link for the other thing you're talking, the poll.
So the poll is in the Meet itself. So in the actual Meet screen where you're seeing the presentation right now, you'll see on the bottom black bar, triangle, square, and circle. Go ahead and click on that, select polls, and then that should come right up. My fabulous support staff just dropped in the link to the chat right now. Also, that doc that you're seeing has hyperlinks. So actually, like, not a dumb question at all. Let me go through this real fast. On that document, you'll see Schoology advanced links and Q&A. You'll see the session Google Meet link. That's where you're at right now. No need to click on that again. You'll also have the sign-in link and survey. Please complete that at the end of the session because it is a survey. Unless you just want to give me 10s straight across the board right now. Then you can fill it out all day long. And then under that, you have the presentation slide deck. You are going to want this presentation slide deck. Keep it forever and ever and ever. Any other questions about just getting started, Meet controls? All right. So my name is Drea Aguirre. I am a digital coach that supports the near Northeast region. And then today in my chat, I have Brian Dino, Matthew Willems, and EJ, who is like the star of the show today. So if you don't know EJ, he will have some incredible conversations with you later. And today we're going to be able to use Schoology in a more advanced level to best support all of our students in learning. I know that a lot of us had experience using Schoology last year during remote learning and the pandemic. And it was kind of just like a mad rush to, switch up some assignments and get them from paper to on the computer. So now we really want to focus on getting to know Schoology in that higher level so that we can really start to differentiate assignments, push out things to individual students, make sure that our platforms are accessible to every single one of our students in driving an equity goal. So here's the most important thing that I'm going to teach you in this entire session is how to use this slide deck. Now, the first thing I recommend is that while you're using this, it's a lot easier to click on all the links if you are in present mode. So if you're going through this presentation, you're having a hard time clicking on the links, go ahead and present it. It should be a little bit easier for you. And so what you're going to do, you can read all of this on your own time if you would like to. It's going to explain everything I'm talking about right now. But you are going to click on the buttons that highlight the topics that you are most interested. So right now, it looks like I have the most interest in assessments and test/quiz. So that's what I'm going to start with. We don't have a ton of participants in the session right now, which is awesome for all of y'all because I can just make it a lot more individualized. But walking through that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my assessments button right here, and I'm going to click on it, and it's going to take me to my assessment page. And so from here, I can get an overview, or maybe I already know what assessments are, but I want to go into the different question types we have, or how to make sure that I have differentiation in my test, or maybe I just want to look at assessment settings. So I'm going to click on any one of these buttons, and it's going to take me there. If I ever want to go back, not only can I use my arrow keys, which is going to just direct me through the slide, but I can also use my buttons and go back. If I want to return all the way home, I just hit my return home button. And it is that easy. This slide deck is full of GIFs, pictures, information, so just a wealth of knowledge for you. What is hard about these sessions, especially when we get into advanced sessions, is that there are so many different avenues that you can take when you want to be quote unquote advanced Schoology users. So that's why I've put together this presentation for you. Hopefully everybody will get a little bit something that's exactly what they wanted out of this presentation. And again, because we have a little bit lower side on the participants, I can hopefully answer all of the questions y'all have. So I'm going to go ahead and get started with assessments and test quiz. So the first thing that I do want to note with assessments, test quiz, I personally always use assessments over test quiz. Schoology continues to tell us that test quiz is going to be phased out, but like I've heard that since I started using Schoology in 2015, and we still have not phased out test quiz. There's no date on that from what I understand. So if you want to continue using test quiz, all of those from what I've been told by Schoology support should be, if you have a bunch of test quiz saved, once they phase that out, they should be auto converted to assessments after that. So you don't worry about like losing any of your work. But I do like to play with assessments because they have so many different options for my kiddos. Instead of my basic multiple choice, short response, all of that, I have a huge variety of different options that I'm going to get into. The other thing that I really like is the assessment settings. And these really mirror like my high stakes exams. They can go into some of the features that like I can't really use when I'm using like the Illuminate platform. So if I'm doing a lot of practice, something that I don't need that district-wide data reported for, or the like beefy reports that Illuminate gives me, I can choose to use Schoology assessments. The other highlight with that is that because it's connected to Schoology, it's going to auto grade anything that is available to be auto graded. So that's going to be like my multiple choice questions, my explicit constructed response, any sort of drag and drop options where there's like a clear right answer. Those are going to be auto graded for me. And then once that score is ready to go, it's going to automatically dump into my grade book, which is very nice. This is what my assessment settings bar looks like. I can toggle all of these off and on. So all of them are a yes, no toggle, except for the things that I have listed there. You know, set it to what you're looking for. And then if I want to focus on differentiation with my test, I have a couple of different options. And the one that I like to use most is like my individual assign feature. So I'll build out my test or my assessment in Schoology, and that'll be my base. And then based off of the accommodations that I have with my students, maybe I have a handful of students who they have limited answer options. And so I'm supposed to take away one or two of the answer options for them. Or maybe I have some students where I need to give them access to a lot more graphics instead of like bulky text. I can go through, make those changes, and then just individually assign them to the students that need them. And what I like about that is that my students who are individually assigned that are only going to see that test and nobody else is going to see it. So then we get out of this like the shame factor that comes with like getting the different tests. When you like hand a kiddo a different colored test, like everybody in the room knows that they have a different test. And so because it's the only test they see, there's no confusion on who's supposed to be taking what test. And on top of that, they don't have to like be outed that they're getting a separate test. The other thing that I would love for you to go and play around with, because I could spend an entire 90 minutes just going over the question types in Schoology assessments, are the vast amount of question types that they have here. So all of these are linked out to help guides. Those help guides are very specific. They're very detailed on how to use all of these and what examples look like. And so these are all different options that I have when making assessments. Do I have questions about assessments? Anything like specific that people want to see me go over? Anything that would be helpful when it comes to assessments?
So in Canvas, there was an ability to make a variety of math problems so I teach physics. So like you could just change the number and get 200 different problems. Do you know anything about that in terms of Schoology? Like, do they have like a formula-based problem or where you can kind of?
Not that I know of, but that is a great thing for me to look into. I'm going to take down your name right now so that I can play with that a little bit.
Thanks.
And get back with you. Because that would be really awesome. And if they don't have it, I will definitely write that into an update request. Now, that being said, I don't have a lot of clout in Schoology, so it's not like I snap my fingers and they jump. But I will put that in if they don't have that feature already. So I'm going to look into that. I haven't heard of anything that's like that, but again, I will look into it. Other questions? I saw some raised hands.
I have a question, and my internet was slow today. I saw somebody say that in the chat. So you may have covered that. I was a little late. The assessments I've created last year, will I be able to use them if I'm teaching that same section and content this year?
Yep. So all those assessments are going to be, if you haven't saved them to your resources, which is an additional step if you just like want to have them all in like one house, they are going to be available in your archived courses. So if I go into Schoology, I'm going to go ahead and share that tab. So when I go into my courses, I'm going to select courses, my courses, and then I'm going to go into this archive section. And that's going to bring up all of the classes that I've been associated with. Hopefully you don't have this many, but you'll be able to go into your class from last year or last semester or whenever that archive period was and pull those assessments. So I can go in here. Let me do a class that I know actually has stuff in it. So I could go into my archive section here, and then I could take anything from wherever I'm looking for, use this gear icon here, and then use my copy to course button. And then that's going to allow me to copy to any course that I am a course admin on.
And Andrea, can I do that for an entire folder?
You can do that for an entire folder, which is my favorite thing to do, especially like if I taught a section, and I'm teaching that exact same section again this year, and I just like want my foundation of all of the stuff that I used from that previous school year, I can just take this entire folder. You can see that I have my gear icon here, and I'm going to copy this entire folder over to my courses. Now, when I do that, I do want to be very clear. If I have assignments that are connected to Google Docs in any way, so you can see that when I go in here, this has an attached Google document on it. I am going to have to reattach that. It's the same thing when I copy the assignment to any course, whether it's an archived or whether it's an active class. I do have to recopy those Google assignments. Any other questions? Cool. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go through everything that's been upvoted in the order that it's been voted on. If you have questions along the way, if I'm going too fast, please just hop in, let me know. I know that, like, especially when I get excited, I tend to talk really fast. Just hop in, tell me to push pause. And on top of that, this is being recorded. I'll make sure that everybody here gets that session recording, and it will be available in your Schoology course once it's done processing. So the next thing I'm going to go over is Mastery Tracker. Mastery Tracker is a beast in itself. And I do have a couple of schools that I'm working with this year who are like being very intentional about using Mastery Tracker to show both teachers and students where they're at in terms of like standard mastery. And so when I go into my Mastery Tracker, if I've already got it set up and I've started putting assignments in, my Mastery Tracker is going to look something like this, where, you know, I've got some reds, I got some greens, I got some dark greens, and I got some stars. So before I get into setting it up, I want to explain what all of this means. Now, first of all, you'll see that instead of numbers, mine have letters. So I've set a custom scale so that my scale aligns with the performance bands that I'm using for my SLOs. And that's what I've decided to track with my Mastery Tracker. If I wanted to, I could go into my gear icon and change that up. And then it's going to give me percentages like that. So that scale is going to control a lot for me. Scales can be so customized that I highly recommend, if you want to do any sort of custom scales that are linked to your Mastery Tracker, that you work with your digital coach on that. They're going to be able to walk through, really talk through any like implications that those scales might have, and work through with you like how exactly to set those scales up to get what you want. So you'll see that I have my overall, this is going to be an average of what my students have performed on this specific standard or learning objective. So in Schoology, anytime you link a learning objective to an assignment, to a test quiz, anything like that, it's going to populate it in your mastery tracker. And so learning objectives can be custom learning objectives like I have here, which are my SLOs, or they can be standard like you see here. So depending on what you track is what learning objectives you'll tie to the assignments. So this is my average. So for this student, that's the average score that they've received on this learning objective. I also have the average in my class. So if I'm looking for some quick data right here, I know that my class is most struggling with my SLO 1 block. So maybe I'm going to do some extra enrichment on SLO 1 because as a class, that's where we need the most improvement. When it comes to differentiation, you can also see that, you know, maybe my student Leon here, he doesn't need any extra enrichment in SLO 1, but he does need some additional support in SLO 3. So when it comes to differentiating assignments, I can push out some assignments that just hone in on skills that surround SLO 3 to this student. This number right here tells me how many assignments this student has completed to get this average. When I hover over it, you'll see that it gives me the breakdown for all of those assignments and what that student scored on those assignments to get this makeup. This star means that they've shown mastery. And so I've set that up in my settings that they have to score a certain amount to achieve mastery. And in order to get this star, they have to show it at least 3 times, 4 times. I can put in that number. And you'll see that once they get that star, it doesn't go away, even if they dip down below where they're not meeting that mastery standard anymore. So that tells me that like here, they've shown mastery on 3 of the 4 assignments, but that one assignment they scored real low on. And so it's not, they're still not at that point, at that threshold where they'll get that green percentage-wise. The green means that they have met, and then the dark green means that they have exceeded. And I can adjust all of those settings when I go in my gear icon and I select my mastery settings. So if they hit mastery at least once, then they'll get that star. And I want them, the dark green is going to be exceeding at 93%, and a meeting is going to be 75%. You can also select how it's going to build that average in. So I have mine set by decaying average, which means that it's going to weight the most recent assignments more heavily than the original assignments. I can also choose to have it by the highest score. So if I want to say that it's going to take the highest score out of the 5 assignments that I have, that's the score it's going to show instead of an average. Or I can just do a regular average with that. I just want to pause. I did hear a little chat blip come up. I am not looking at the chat. So if you have a quick question, my wonderful chat support can definitely help you out. But my wonderful chat support can also stop me at any time and just holler at me if I need to stop or go back to do something.
I just missed where the gear icon was. If you could just go back, I didn't see what you were clicking. Where is it?
Yep. So I'm in mastery, and then my gear icon is just right here. And then I'm going to go to mastery settings. And then that's where I bring up this. And then as we saw earlier, this is where I can change my scale here. So I have created a custom scale. And then that way, when I go in to put in my end of year SLOs, I already have the categories that they need right here. It made it really easy for me. Now, you'll see that I have all of these assignments that are linked towards specific objectives. What I can do when I'm making my assignments is I can attach them to like assignments themselves. So if we click here, we can see that when I set up my assignment, I just went through the normal process of creating an assignment, and then I aligned a learning objective to it. So I just click this button here, and I can go into my custom learning objectives. So if I've made my own, like my SLO samples, or they have banks that are pre-populated with my Common Core and state standards. So I can go through and just select in exactly, like, it's going to break it down block by block by block. And I'm just going to continue to click in until I select the standard that is aligned to my assignment. Now, when I do an assignment, it's going to take the overall score of that assignment, unless I have a rubric attached to it. So if I want specific, so now I'm looking at 2 different learning objectives here. And so if I just give the student a 9 out of 10, it's going to take that as a 9 out of 10 for this standard and a 9 out of 10 for this standard. But if I'm looking at it and I know that my student actually got what would be a 10 out of 10 on this standard, but an 8 out of 10 on this standard, and I want that to reflect in the mastery tracker, I'm going to want to use a rubric. And so I can go and create a rubric right from my assignment. And so I'm going to go in, I just selected in my scale/rubric, and I'm going to hit create new. And so the first thing it's going to do, because I have those learning objectives tied to it, it's automatically going to pull those learning objectives into my rubric. If I didn't have learning objectives already tied to the assignment, I can just go here, hit learning objectives, and then go through and select whatever learning objectives I needed to tie. If I don't want this to be tied to my mastery tracker, instead of using learning objectives, I'm just going to add criteria. So maybe, like, I want these 2 tied to the mastery tracker, but I also want, like, spelling and comprehension. And I don't want that tied to mastery tracking, but I do want to incorporate it in their overall grade. So that is going to make it so that, you know, this isn't going to be like a new category that comes up in my mastery tracker, but for this assignment, they will also have that category. I just hit create, and then it's going to tie all of that. So now I have that rubric attached to it, and I'm going to hit save changes. When I go to grade this now, it's going to take me 10.5 years to find in my grade book. But when I go to grade it, it is going to bring up that rubric so that I can just click on the different components of the rubric. My students will also be able to see the rubric that is being used to score them. So I'll just be able to show you with a separate assignment that has a rubric. I can just click into these, and then it's going to auto-calculate the score for me. Now, the other thing I can do is I can tie specific learning objectives to questions on my assessments. And so I just go in, I add my item, do my correct answer setup, and then I just add my learning objectives from here. And again, those same banks are going to come up. So if I have custom objectives, I can select those. If I want to tie them to standards, I can tie them to standards. So then once I select the standard that's being selected, it'll tie to that. I hit save. And then my data for that standard is only going to pull, instead of from the entire test, like let's say that a student got a 70 on the test, it's going to pull from only the questions that were tied to that standard. So it gives me a more accurate picture of where that student was at in terms of the learning objectives that I'm looking at. So in short, mastery tracking is an awesome way, especially like I loved using Mastery Tracker when I was having to complete SLOs. It really saved my sanity. I had a lot of like writing stuff that my kiddos had to do. Everything could be tied. It was right in Schoology. It was really awesome. I didn't have to keep this huge bulky binder full of evidence because all of my stuff was there, right there on Schoology. And I added my STR or my STL as a member, like as a course admin. So she could come in at any time, look at my mastery tracker, look at those assignments. And it was just so much easier for me to keep track of it that way. So on the setup end, it does seem a little bit overwhelming, but it's so worth it. I love using the mastery tracker. I think it's a really underutilized feature of Schoology. And if you want somebody to just sit down with you and work through mastery tracking stuff, please, please, please reach out to your digital coach. And all of your digital coaches would be so happy to support you in this. Questions on Mastery Tracker?
So, Dre, I think there's a little bit of a question about gradebook and Mastery Tracker. Does Mastery Tracker information show up in gradebook as a separate category, or is it completely like a separate gradebook itself?
It's almost like a separate gradebook itself. So I can have assignments that I don't want in my gradebook. So you see this assignment here. Gradebook wise, I want this as a part of my classwork category. But if I didn't want it to impact their overall grade, I just wanted it in their mastery tracker, I could put it as an ungraded assignment. It's still going to give me all the features of the assignment. It's still going to allow me to use the rubrics, but it's not going to show up on the gradebook. It's only going to show up in their mastery tracker. So you have to think of those as two separate systems. However I code this when I'm doing my assignment setup or when I'm doing my assessment setup is how it's going to appear in my gradebook. And then how I tie it to the learning objectives is how it'll show up in my mastery tracker. Does that make sense?
I'm sorry, I have a lot of questions. This will be my first school year using SLOs. And so what I've learned is that we're tracking maybe a certain number of students over the school year. So with the mastery tracker, could I just track those students, or would I track my whole class and just submit the data, at the end of the year, or monitor that data?
So a couple questions, because SLOs are, I could have a whole day PD for SLOs themselves. So what do you teach?
On SLOs.
So what is your content like? What do you teach?
English 2.
Okay. So with your SLOs, it's not necessarily tracking a specific group of students, like within a class period. Like you would choose a class period of students that would be like your evidence. Now, best practice is going to be that you're keeping that data for all of your students, because it's going to be super helpful, like outside of SLOs, for you to just know where your students are and what supports they need. But if you wanted to, and your sections are unlinked, you could just tie your learning objectives to assignments in that like specific SLO class that you're following, and not tie the learning objectives to the assignments in the other courses. I think that that's doing a lot more than is necessary. And even if you tie those learning objectives to the assignments in other classes, if you want to just like really focus in on the data aspect of that one class, like just focus on the data aspect of that one class and kind of like work it up year by year. So if you're like super overwhelmed with the fact that you're going to have 5 different sections of like mastery tracking to keep a part of. So like one, it's just, it like becomes a part of your normal grading, because like I went over before, if it's going to be in your grade book and you're going to grade it anyway, like you're going to grade it anyway. And all this is doing is like doing the work for you, separating all of that out and tracking it. Now you can just look at that like one sect of students and have it like tracking the other sect. It's not going to be any more difficult for you. But if you wanted to untie those, you would just have to have unlinked sections. Any other questions when it comes to mastery tracking?
I don't know how to put that in here as a.
So everything that I attach to a learning objective will show up in the mastery tracker. That's correct?
So yes, if you attach a learning objective to an assignment, it is going to show up in your mastery tracker. Now I can make all of the custom learning objectives in the world. If I don't attach them to assignments or assessments, or they're just like floating around hanging out in my resources, it's not going to show up in my mastery tracker. So it has to be attached to one of those assignments. Y'all have some awesome questions. Keep them coming. Okay, so I will say that if you're going around, you're playing around in Mastery Tracker, if you ever get stuck on something, or you just, again, want some additional support, please, 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 please reach out to your digital coach, and they're going to be more than happy to sit down with you and support you through that. Okay, so I'm going to move on ahead to, I think like a more natural flow is going to be assignment submissions. Okay, so when I go in to make an assignment, here is the like template that I'm going to see. And so every time I make an assignment, this is what I'm going to see. This is my building block of assignment. So I have to give it a name. And this name is what's going to show up in my grade book, or if I've aligned it to my mastery tracker with learning objectives, in my mastery tracker. So what I like to tell teachers is that it's very helpful for them and for students and community to name your assignments something a little bit more specific than like homework 1, homework 2, homework, like, because what we want to do is like, just with naming things, the more information we can give students about like what it is, gives them the opportunity to like have a little bit more ownership over, like, they missed class that day, they can click on it and like get caught up, or they're missing an assignment for whatever reason at all. They can go into the grade book, look at like, oh, okay, I'm missing the close read on the Bill of Rights. They click on it. And again, the more information I include in my assignments, the easier it makes it for students to be able to independently catch up. Same thing with parents. They're able to see from their view what's missing their gradebook view, and they can go in and actually click on the assignments when you make them like this and they're not just grade columns. And it's going to take them to that assignment. So again, the more information I can include, it's going to help support students in finishing the assignment, the better. And it's going to really build up their skills to be independent learners. So I'm going to put in the description any sort of instructions that they might need. Again, more information, the better. I typically do like, here's how I want you to complete this assignment. Even if I'm attaching a like digital worksheet to it, I'm still going to put in those instructions right there in the description, because that's the first thing that pops up for them. So I can go through here. And then I can also attach files or links or even audio video recordings to like this specific assignment. So if I'm saying, I want you to read this article, and then I want you, after you've read the article, to come in and do your like digital copy of whatever worksheet I have linked here, I can link the article to the assignment itself. So if I go through, I'm gonna put on a due date. So the due dates are gonna really help students because it's now going to, when I put on a due date, it's going to show up for them in their upcoming task. It's also going to put on like a late flag to it if they submit it late. That late flag is gonna show up on their end and on your end. And if they have not completed an assignment that has a due date on it, it'll also show up for them in that overdue assignments category. So as soon as they log on to Schoology, no matter what class they're in, they're gonna see a sidebar with upcoming assignments that they can click on and go right there. I can change the point value. I'm gonna make sure that this is in a category. So if I don't have categories set up, which I should do in my gradebook setup according to like my school-based policies, I'm gonna add it to my category that I want it to be in. If I choose to have, to make my assignment ungraded, it's not gonna show up for them in the gradebook. And so if you want, even if you want like it to be a practice assignment that is worth 0 points, it's just for students to practice, but you want them to have that feedback through any sort of score or rubric, you can either put it into a category that has a 0 weight that's not going to impact their grade, or you could make it worth 0 points. You just want them to be able to see it a little bit easier, or even put a due date on it. And then your period is, it should auto default to whatever period that you're currently in. Those periods are going to be set up, they're manually, or they're automatically done for you through whatever IC is telling Schoology. The only time you would have to change this is, let's say that we're in October, we're like right at the end of Q1, and you're making an assignment that is going to be due in Q2. You'll get like a little flag that says, let me see if I can. So you should get a flag once your like due date is set that like your assignment is due outside of the grading period window, and you should change that window. So because I don't have additional grading periods in there, it's not going to prompt that for me, but yours should come up with like a little warning message right there that like, hey, just so you know, like your assignment is going in a separate grading period than it should be. And then again, I can adjust my scale or rubric here. So I can create a rubric right from the assignment if I want to. And then if I want to align learning objectives, I can align learning objectives. So if I just leave my assignment like this, students are going to have to attach their own submissions. And my submissions are going to show up right here. So as I have students coming in and submitting, it's going to show me their submissions here. I can then click on those submissions and grade them appropriately. When students submit, they'll be able to either upload their own submission, they'll be able to create something. So like if I have an assignment, it's an exit ticket, I want a paragraph response, they could type that paragraph response directly onto the assignment itself. They don't have to open up a separate document and attach it. They can use that create feature. Or they can also use the video audio recording. So those will be their options for the submission. If I want for them to, let's say I want to attach like some sort of digital worksheet, or my favorite thing to do when my students were writing essays is I would just attach a blank document to a assignment so that everything's in the right place. What I'll see is this page. And then I'll have these two buttons. So here's my in progress. And it's going to have the document that I attached and all of the work that my student has done on this document. And I'm able to just go through my list here and see what my students are doing. If my student has not yet opened this assignment, I'm going to get a note that looks like this. And then once my students are done with the assignment, they've hit that submit button, I can see all of those in my submissions tab. So I'll be able to go in, you can see that I can grade it right from this assignment space. And go from there. Now, also, if I have a student who has submitted an assignment, but I'm like, oh, this is blank or it's not done, I can kick that assignment back to them using my unsubmit button. The other thing, when a student does hit that submit assignment button, if it is past the due date, that student cannot unsubmit that assignment themselves. You have to go back and unsubmit that assignment. And once they hit that submit button, it locks it from editing. So students are no longer able to edit that document, even if they try to go through their Google Drive. They can't edit it once they've submitted. So when I go to set that up,
Drea, while you're setting that up, just want to give you a timing note. We're about halfway through, so about 45
awesome.
more minutes.
Thank you so much. I'm going to do the exact same setup that I had, but now I'm going to click on my Assign from App tool. So I'm going to use my Google Drive assignments, and this is going to connect to my Google Drive. And so I'm going to find the assignment that I want for my students to complete. I will click on it so that it keeps that blue highlight. If I'm not sure if that's the actual assignment that I wanted them to do, I can hit this view button and it's going to bring up a separate window where I can view that, make sure that that's exactly what I want. And then I hit attach, and that's going to force create a copy for all of my students. And then again, I'll go through and continue to set up the rest of the things that I need. So I'll hit create that assignment. And that's going to attach that Google assignment to my assignment. Now I can attach Google Docs, Google Sheets, and Google Slides to assignments. I can attach forms. I can't attach pages. It's just docs, sheets, and slides. If I wanted to, maybe I have a Jamboard that my students are doing, I can go through and on that assignment, I can add that Jamboard in as a link. And so then it's going to attach to the assignment. It's really easy for my kiddos to find, but it's not going to force create a copy for them. Now, the other thing I did want to highlight with assignments is all of the options down here. So I have the option to individually assign. If I click on that button, what I can do is it's going to auto-generate this little tab here. So I can start typing in students' names that are in my members tabs. So I'm going to go to a course that actually has some members in it. So I can go and I can start typing in different students' names. If I have grading group set up, I can also just start typing in the name of my grading group. And then that's only going to show this assignment to that specific set of students. I can choose to lock the assignment. And so that makes it so that students can't go in, they can't submit, they can't do anything with the assignment. Some teachers like to use this after the due date is passed if they don't want any additional submissions by students. You can lock the assignment. I want to make sure that my submissions are enabled. Maybe I'm posting this for a future assignment. I can disable submissions, so they're not allowed to actually like submit anything until I turn this back on. I do want to make sure that this is published to students. And my note with unpublishing things, please do not ever unpublish materials after students have started working on them. If you unpublish the materials and they are tied to your grades, what's going to happen is it's going to disappear from the student view completely, which means it also disappears from the student's grade book. For some reason, it's going to keep it in your view of the grade book. So then what happens is your view of a student's grade and their view of their grade are two very different things. And if you are a school that opts into pass back, the grade that is passed back to IC is going to be the same grade that students see, not the grade that you see. So just keep everything published. Organization-wise, use folders. Once a unit is done, put it in a folder that says like past units, something like that, but keep those published. You can also put on grade statistics. And so what that'll do is it'll give students a breakdown of how everybody else in the class is doing on the assignment. So once you've gone and graded it, it'll say that the average score was this. It'll give you like a nice little box and whiskers plot of lowest and highest. It doesn't have any of those names attached to it, but it'll show you an overview of the assignment. If you have a rubric, it'll break down the rubric of like, most people scored this or this. And then the comments enabled, students will be able to comment or leave comments on assignments. If you don't want that on, you can disable comments and then they can't leave those the comments on the assignment. I actually used to turn this off because I'd have students asking questions about the assignment on the assignment through comments, and I like wouldn't get those notifications, and so I like wouldn't see them until I went to grade the assignment, and by that time like their question has probably already been answered by somebody else, or they like did the entire assignment wrong and it's already due. So I turned it off, which like forced my students to like send me an email or ask me in person during class. But you can keep those on if you would like to. And then you can also copy this to courses right when you're creating the assignment. Questions about assignments?
So there's one question I wasn't really sure about, and that is if you have created an object, maybe it's a page or something, and then later you want to change it to a different type of thing, like an assignment or something, is there a way to copy that content from that object, or do I have to recreate it, or can I, there's no way to copy paste anything between those two objects, is there?
So you can like actually copy paste, like use Command C, Command V. But otherwise, like, no, you're just gonna have to recreate that object. So if I have a page and then I want to make that page an assignment, I've got to redo all of that stuff. I think the workaround with that would be you can link to the page. So like you can literally take the URL when you're on the page, use that as a link in the assignment and say like, okay, here's the assignment, because I don't want to have to like copy paste all that again. I want you to do all of that, submit it however they need to submit it, and then it'll show up in your grade book. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think it does. If I have one object and I thought it should be a different object, I'm still going to have to create that other object, but I can just link them so it doesn't confuse the kids about why there was something there and then it disappeared or something.
Yeah. Any other questions? When we're talking about object types, are we talking about like the difference between an assignment, an assessment, Can you like speak a little bit more on that, Diego?
Yeah, he's looking for the different material types that you're adding to the course.
Yeah, so like when I go into my add materials, an assignment is going to link to my grade book. It gives me a lot of flexibility with ways that students can submit. So again, like I walked everybody through, you can have students create their own stuff. So for example, I used to have my students do like a magazine project. It didn't make sense for them to like put that in a Google Doc because they were making it in Canva and then downloading the PDF and attaching it to the assignment. So that's when I would use like the non-Google Doc assignment for that. Anything else, I typically use like a Google Doc attachment with that assignment. It feeds into my grade book. It can also be used for Mastery Tracker. Test, quiz, and assessment. Those are going to be really great for auto grading stuff. Multiple choice, short response, really great for exit tickets or like pre-assessments that you might want to have. Again, you can tie specific questions to standards or learning objectives to feed into your Mastery Tracker. They're great. They can also be dumped into your grade book. File links, external tools. That's if I don't want something tied to an assignment or my grade book, but I want them to have it available as a resource, that's when I would use this. So I use this a lot for like my textbook link or my syllabus link, or maybe I like would download my syllabus as a PDF and I just wanted it to live inside of Schoology. That's when I would add a file. Any additional resources that I might want my students to be using, like we're doing a research project and here are like different articles that they can check out to get started, but I don't actually want it tied to an assignment. That's when I would use this. Discussions are really cool. So when I go in and add discussions, I have my prompt and then students can go in and respond. I can also set it so that students have to like make a response before they can see everybody else's response. I can set up in the STEM that they have to respond to 2 or 3 other classmates. Those are really great for, you know, starting class, starting new units, getting my kiddos talking, and especially like if I have a mix of students who are remote, or maybe I want to have them do that discussion post for homework. They're still able to connect and have that dialogue with other classmates while they're not like physically in person with those classmates. Pages. I use Pages when I want to embed things, in all honesty. So if I want to embed like a YouTube video or a slide deck, I typically use it as a page instead of as a link. You can also just like give a lot of information through Pages. So if you wanted to, trying to think of how I've seen like teachers use it in the classroom. If I wanted to like start off the unit and give them some background information and include like some pictures and some text. Again, I don't want to do anything with it. And I don't want to create it in like a separate Google Doc. I want to create it so that it lives on Schoology. I could create it in a page and have that accessible by my students. Media albums and packages, most teachers don't use. I think that I've seen one teacher use a media album and I've seen like one teacher use packages. Media albums are going to be like collections of media, so videos, pictures. Packages are going to be like you can align different zip. It's weird and I don't ever use them. Honestly, like if you are doing more than needs to be done with a page, I don't know if like Schoology is going to be the right platform for you to use. So definitely reach out to your digital coach and have them walk through some options if you're looking into using either of those. Any other questions about assignments?
Drea, when you were adding materials, I noticed there are also some things on the right column. Some of those are different at different schools if they've purchased a subscription.
Yes.
But it's definitely the ones that everybody sees, I think, are the ones that you're looking at right now. I think all of those are district-wide, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, except for Newsella. Yeah. So everybody should have these ones, and I think they also might have the Sora app pushed. If they don't have the Sora app pushed, that's a library services thing that we need to make sure is pushed to all of our courses. But Gail, these are all apps. And so if you want to know more about apps and those integrations with Schoology, you can go into the app integration section. And it's just going to go over like what those are. I would say if you have an app that you'd like to use and it's not showing up in your Schoology course, what you'll have to do, one, make sure that you have reported that you're using it on the academic technology menu. That's linked here. And you can follow, I've hyperlinked in the steps for requesting an app installation in Schoology. So essentially what needs to happen is you have to have it listed on the ATM. You have to have building leadership, like thumbs up, and then dots will push out that app so that you can use it. I will say that most apps in Schoology act as like, they're almost just like links that can embed within Schoology so that you can stay on one platform. The app that I am most impressed with is definitely Edpuzzle. It has like a very legitimate integration with Schoology where it can like dump straight into your gradebook. It's really awesome. If you haven't used Edpuzzle, you haven't used the Edpuzzle app, I highly recommend you check that out. We have lots of resources on that, and your digital coach can give you a lot of support if you would like that. But yes, if I want to use one of these, I can click on it. And depending on what that app is, will lead me to different sections and different ways that I can interact with it.
Dre, I was just going to add, this is Brian here, digital coach. Don't forget your sandbox. This time of year, a lot of teachers are coming back in and they want to, if they're familiar with Schoology and they want to try a new thing that you've demonstrated here, use your sandbox, which students cannot see. Play with it in there, stage it. If you get, a lot of teachers stage their entire content in their sandbox, and then you can copy it over into a real course. If you play in your real course, students might will be able to see that and might think it's a real assignment. So play in that sandbox, and once you get something you like in your sandbox, copy it over to your real course. So a lot of good things that Dre is showing here, but that's what your sandbox is for.
Yes, thank you for that shout out, Brian. Like, please, 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 if you want to play around in your sandbox. That way, like, especially like once the school year starts and you have kiddos who are actually in your courses, you want to play with something, you can break all of the things in your sandbox course and nothing's going to matter. If you don't have a sandbox course for some reason, please reach out to your digital coach. They can make you a new sandbox. But yeah. Any other questions with assignments or materials? Cool. The last thing I'm gonna cover in today's session is gonna be those communication tools. Then we'll leave it up to just like open Q&A. If you want me to demo something or explore something else with you, I am more than happy to do that. But the last thing I had on my list was those communication tools. So there are different ways that you can communicate with students and families via Schoology. So the first thing that I like to draw teachers' attention to is the updates tab. And so go where I don't have any updates. Maybe I should go where I have. So I click on my updates tab, and this is going to let me like post general announcements. So these are things like I'm sure lots of people used updates when they were remote teaching to share their Google Meet links, or to let, I used to let my students know when I was going to be absent one day. So like, hey, everyone, I'm out today. Make sure that you complete all of the assignments and materials in the Unit 1 Lesson 4 folder. So I can post that, and it's going to both show up in my updates feed on the course, and it'll show up when my students first log on to Schoology. If they have it set to their overall updates, it's going to show up on that page too. And so they're able to comment on this. I used to have kids like it all the time. It's very Facebookified. What I can also do is I can make posts So I can make this post. If I want this to stay just at the top of the page, hanging out for them so they don't have to be in my update section, what I can do is I can click on this button here, and I can click on my bell. And so once I click on the bell, it's going to post it right up here at the top. And so this is going to stay up here until I hit this remove button. And you'll see that it's also up here on my materials page. So my students are going to see it as soon as they get to my class. They'll be able to interact with it. The other thing that you'll see, if you have a course where you have any parents that are also in the course, I'm going to try to find one. So if I have this course has parents in it, I can go into updates. When I write my update, this no longer has parents attached to it. So that's unfortunate. But you'll have a little icon with a person there, and that'll be also show to parents. So you can also choose that option. The other thing I can do with updates is I can use these features down here. So maybe I want to, we've all gotten in that situation where we're teaching and then out of nowhere the bell rings and you're like, oh no, I didn't have a chance to let my students know that they're supposed to use this link to access the article that I want them to read for homework tonight. I can do, hey, just a reminder for tonight's homework, please read the article. I can attach that article with the link, and it's going to live on that post. And they can click on it. It's going to take them to the article. I can also add an audio video recording. So maybe I don't want to type this out. I want to talk to them, or I'm on my honeymoon and I want to say hello. Cool, I can do that. Post an update. I can also post polls. So I had some teachers use this for warm-up stuff. And so they'd have a poll and they'd have their kids respond to the poll. You can use it for okay, so we're going to really dive deep into this section. What are y'all most interested in learning about in this section? Anything that you need a poll for, you can post that. Students can respond to it. And then you're also able to copy from courses directly from here, or I can, I'm pretty sure I have to use it right there. So yeah, those are my updates. I also have the ability to send messages to students. Now, the only thing that I will warn you about is you have to teach your students to look at their messages. I don't know how many times I've looked at a student's Schoology page and they have like 83 unread messages up here because they've literally never looked at a message before. So if you're going to use the messaging, you need to communicate that with your students and you need to like teach them to read these. It's the same thing as like teaching them to read their emails. I don't know how many students I've interacted with who just like don't even know that they have an email through DPS, let alone have ever checked it before. So if I want to send a message to students, there are a couple different ways I can do this. I can go to my members tab. And it would help if I actually had members in my course. So I can go to my members tab and I can, maybe I just want to send Leon a message because he missed class today. I can go to my gear icon next to his name and I can send him a message. Type in my message. I can link in any resources that he might need. Cool, cool, cool. Then I would send that to him. I can also go into my course options, and my course options are always going to be below my little profile picture. And I can go to send message. And so this is going to allow me to send a message to all of the members of the course, including students, admins, all of that stuff. I can just send it to my course admins. So maybe I have some co-teachers that I want to like send a message to instead of writing an email, or I can just send it to members. I don't need like the principal and the assistant principal and the STL that's on my course as an admin. I don't need it to clutter up their stuff. So I just want to send it to members. Once you have a course with parents, you'll also have an option to send to parents that are tied to the course. Same thing with students. If you're going to use this to send messages, it's not actually going to go to their email unless they have it set up. It's going to go to their like Schoology inbox. So you would have to really let parents and community know to check their messages on Schoology and to make sure that those notifications are kept on. Same thing, I'm gonna put in a subject, I'm gonna put in a message, send that to my students. Those are the big methods of communication I have. I can also send, I should be able to send messages to groups. Or I can go in, I can click on my message button. I can hit new message and I can start typing in my student's name. You'll see that sometimes this is really finicky. So I don't like to use it like this. I'd rather just like go to my members page and find them like that. But I also, so I'll have to select them, then I can send him a message right there. Questions on communication, updates, all that good stuff. All right. So I'm just going to leave this time open Q&A. If you have questions, you want me to like hit certain topics, let me know. Also, make sure to take the survey, the sign-in survey. That's how you get credit for being here this morning. That survey can be found both on that page where the tiny URL linked you to and on the Schoology course that you were enrolled in for this session. I can also probably drop it in the chat, or one of my lovely chat support people could. Beautiful. So yes, Diego, I do recommend using assessments over test quizzes for a couple of reasons. I like the fact that there are a lot more options when it comes to question types with assessments. I like the assessment settings better than test quiz. Someday in the future, test quiz will eventually be phased out and all test quizzes will be turned into assessments. I like working with it a lot better. Anything that I can do in test quiz I can do in assessments, especially now. The big drawback with using assessments over test quiz used to be retroactive grading. So if I went back and I changed my answer key, in test quiz, it's going to update all of the students' scores that have already taken it. And with assessments, you had to like go back and manually do it. They fixed that. And so now any changes you make to that answer key are going to reflect in everybody who's already taken it. Any other questions? All right, well, make sure that you take that sign-in survey. Make sure you know who your digital coach is. So that if you have any follow-up questions, you can reach out. You can also always reach out to me and I can CC your digital coach on any communications we have. But everybody on the team is very good, very awesome to work with, and is more than happy to answer your questions. Yeah, and if you're good to go, you can hop right off. I can give you 14 minutes of your day back. Again, make sure that you fill in that sign-in survey so you get credit for this.
Thank you so much.
Of course.
Hey, Brian, just a heads up, the comparison document still lists assessments as having no retroactive grading. And I don't know who owns the document. I don't have editing rights on that to change that.
I think Nadia owns it.
Well, she needs to keep up with her own stuff.
Thanks, Matthew.